Shar, you are just precious. Absolutely precious. Okay. I always have to get myself together when I get up here because I just want to cry. Y'all bless me so much. I'm so grateful that I get to come around, just come here and hug everyone. Just what you say to me in the mornings. And one of our beloved said to me, and she knows who she is, it's just time to celebrate, right? Thank you for saying that. Yeah, we're just here to celebrate. That just changes everything, doesn't it? Because that's not what we think we're here to do. We're here, I can't help myself. I keep quoting Reverend Vita today. We're here to worry, right? Because that's what adults do. They worry. Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for your practice. Because no, it's here to celebrate. So honestly, where are you? CJ, you did a great job with introducing Lent. That was excellent. So as you know, Lent started with Ash Wednesday on Valentine's Day, and I ate chocolate. So Lent is, well, growing up, the way I practice Lent is to give something up. Who grew up Catholic giving something up, right? Chocolate. Right? I have a cousin who we were raised like sisters. And by the way, her eldest daughter got married last night. So if I don't make sense, it was because I was out late dancing last night. And my feet hurt. But anyway, I'm telling you this story because when she was growing up, every Lent, they had to give up the television. Imagine, that was hard, right? 40 days. And I mean, really serious about it. Like her dad would take the TVs, unplug them, and hide them away. I know, my sister, look at the look on her face. She's No, and it was hard, right? It was hard, especially when you're a young person. You like watching your TV. And we didn't have phones in those days to keep us entertained. I mean, it was the TV. Anyway, that's a long story. So there is no place in the Bible that actually talks about Lent as a practice. But what there is that we know that Jesus had 40 days in the desert, right? Y'all remember that? 40 days. And that 40 days he was tempted by the devil. Now, in Unity, we don't believe in the devil. We believe in a concealment of good. We believe in error belief that don't serve us, right? False beliefs. And so that 40 days was a fasting for him. And so there's this belief that in 40 days that there's this completion. So in Unity, we take this 40 days, which is the 40 days prior to the Easter event, right? 40 days prior to our resurrection. And we take this idea and we do what CJ said. We choose to fast. But not from that tangible thing like chocolate or television or waffles like my sister. Emma, who perhaps is watching on Facebook, she and my brother decided to give up waffles, and my mom didn't even have a waffle iron. So that's the way to do it, right? But for us, it's giving up the faults, the error, right? Believing that we're less than, the lack, the limitation. The behaviors, right? Judgment, criticism, control. It's giving that up. That's the hard things to give up, right? It's easy to say, I'm not going to eat chocolate. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe not. If you eat chocolate every day, probably not, right? But to give up that means you have to have a level of awareness. Would you not agree? You have to know, where is the mind? What is the mind doing? So that's what I want to talk about today. And I really struggle with this week because I don't just give y'all homework and not do it myself. I do it first, and then I give it to y'all. And so I was really struggling with okay, it's easy to say, okay, you guys, fast from error belief and false limitation, anything, just fast from it. It's easy just to say it, right? But how do you do it? How do you practice it? So this week I was really in awareness of myself, my monkey mind, my error beliefs, my limited thinking, my lack, my all of those things, right, that I just want to push away. And I was very aware of it. It's like, okay, what am I going to do? What's my practice? So that's what I want to share with you all. Because the practice, and I call it Lenten retreat because it's a retreat, because the practice, all the practice really is the only reason we're here, which I assume is why you're here, right, is to do the awakening. It's just to awaken, right? Just to awaken to what we already know, that there's one presence, and it's good, and it's within us. We are the image, made in the image and after the likeness, and we are good. And so it's just constant, just peeling it away, right? Like an onion, just peeling it away to know that that is already within us, and that's where we want to live from. So are y'all up for this?
Yes.
All right, you're up for it. There's going to be a lot of practice as we go. That way, my hope is you've already started the idea, you've started the practice, and then you go home and you can do it, right? So the first one is that I ask you to do is, what are you in bondage to? What are you in bondage to? That's the word that H. Emily Cady says on that very first word, right? Very first, I was just like, when I read those sentences, what are you in bondage to? Is it your life at home, yourself, your life at work, your life at church? Is it me? Right? That's my board president, as y'all know. Some days. What are you in bondage to? So just really think about that as we go through this sermon. What are you in bondage to? And think about, having just finished doing so much reading, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, I cannot help but think of his words. We are schizophrenic personalities having a civil war with ourselves. That's what he said. Right? So it's that we're here to heal. Because once we heal that, guess what we do? We share it, right? You can't give something that you're not. If you don't love yourself, how are you going to love anyone else? If you don't forgive yourself, how are you going to forgive anyone else, right? That's the practice. We start with ourselves. We start with awareness. And the only way to start with awareness is start with, what am I thinking? What am I holding? Okay, so now that you've discovered, everyone, raise your hand if you know what you're in bondage to. Oh, all righty. Good for y'all. Just hold up all the hands you have, right? No, seriously, what are you in bondage? Just hold that, okay? Because we're gonna have a practice. So the first one is recognize the resistance. Recognize the resistance. Now, what do I mean when I say resistance? Resistance is the mental grip. That's what resistance is, the mental grip. Somebody that I love to listen to, her podcast, Tara Brach, what she says is, release the clench, right? Think about it. Clench your fists, right? Release the clench. What is it that you're clenching on to? What is that? That's the first step to fast, is release the clench. Now, to release the clench, you have to be aware of what you're in bondage to, right? You have to be aware. So, as y'all know, I share myself, right? So my first year, and this is a hard one to have to admit, y'all, but I'm just going to do it, because my hope is that it helps you, right, in your practice, is my first year of ministerial school, I absolutely hated it. I hated it. I hated the assignments. I thought they were wrong. They were stupid. But I could tell you in detail why they were wrong and they were stupid. I wasn't a fan of the teachers. I didn't think they were very good. Wasn't a fan of the coursework. None of it. I hated it, right? Well, here's the thing. I have a PhD. I know how to do this better. I've written assignments. I've been in the classroom. I've written a syllabi. I could tell you in detail everything that was wrong. Where was I? Complete judgment. Living from what? Ego. And fear. Exactly. That's what's underneath that fear, right? Because I believe that I was supposed to show up as perfect. So that is underneath that too. So I hated it. Here's the good news about my program. We did a lot of coursework in self-awareness. So if you're taking a class in self-awareness, hopefully at some point you'll become self-aware. That was the first part, is just becoming aware of the mind, aware of the resistance. What was I resisting? The program, right? The program exactly as it was. It was perfect exactly as it was. And thankfully, I chose to finally do the work, the inner work, right? The inner work of me, of where's my mind, where am I going to live from? And so the work is choosing to live from the individuality. One of the things that Charles Fillmore talks about, our co-founder, is that when we're in that egoic mind or the small mind, that's the personality, right? And it's not that we want to make it wrong, it's that it's not we need to make it in service to the individuality, the big one, right? So when you're deciding to let go of that clench or that bondage, it doesn't mean you're going to be a doormat in your life. That's not the point. It's not, I'm just going to let life happen to me. It's that you're going to learn, you'll have a spaciousness. You'll be able to take a pause. And with that, you'll have discernment, right? One of the things, again, Reverend Vita, I'm sorry, but you taught last week and it's still living with me. She says that one of the things she learned how to do is hold her tongue. Right? Look at Heather's holding her tongue. Not like that, Jan says. Not like that. Hold her tongue. Because what happens when you hold your tongue? You don't say stupid things. Spaciousness. Pause. Is this coming from the judgmental self, the limited self, the self that believes in lack? Is this coming from the divine? So let's just practice that. So here's what I want you to do. Because the thing is I know you know this, when you're living in this clenched place, how does the body feel? Mm-hmm. Tired. My sister says tired. Think of something you're in bondage with. Feel it in the body. Feel it in the mind. Right? But here's the thing. When you hold those fists really tightly, what starts to happen? The body will just start to let go on its own. Why? Because that's how we're meant to live. We're meant to celebrate. That's how we're meant to live, in this released place. So relax. Number 2. Recognize the resistance, recognize the limitation, recognize the controlling behavior, the judgmental behavior, the critical behavior, all of it. Recognize it. Not to beat yourself up, but to relax. So this past week, again, me doing my homework, I took my dog for a walk, Toby, who's like walking a horse, really and truly. It's like walking a horse. I need to just saddle him up and get on top of him. And my mind is just going, monkey mind, a million different ways and places, and all of it is just beating myself up. Haven't been exercising enough, haven't been walking enough, oh my God, haven't gotten this done, haven't gotten that done, everything. And I stop, I take a pause, I breathe, and I just looked at the sky. Because when you look at the sky, you see that vastness. And what do you know? Right? That you're just the small one in that bigness. And in that bigness, I also belong. That bigness is here with me. I looked at the trees. I love looking at trees. One of my favorite noises is just the wind and the way that it moves the trees. That's the relax. That's the release. That's from living from the creative being, the generative being, the loving being, right? In that, everything is possible. It's all possible. I don't have any tissues up here, y'all. Sorry, you guys. I always, just looking at your sweet faces brings me to tears. So where were we? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Vita. We're relaxing. We're in the part where we relax, right? We're relaxing. Okay, so the next piece is reconciliation. That's what I'm offering to you. Take it or leave it. But in the fast, I feel like we recognize the resistance. We recognize that we need to release and relax. And if you're anything like me, you reconcile. Because I'll go back to beating myself up, right? So the reconciliation is when the peace comes, right? The forgiveness comes. And I love what I have here. It's the restoration of fractured relationships by overcoming grief, pain, and anger. That's the reconciliation. It's the restoration of fractured relationships. So most often, the main person that I need to reconcile with is myself, right? One of the things I always say is make sure that the other person is safe in the streets of my mind. That's one of my practices. The other person I need to make sure that is safe in the streets of my mind is myself. I have to be safe in the streets of my mind. So one of the best stories that I know about reconciliation, and I know some of y'all know what I'm going to say, the prodigal son. That's one of the best stories. And it's one of the third parable in Luke. And if you want to know specifically, it is Luke 15, 11 through 32. Everyone knows the story? I'll give you a quick summary, I promise, just really fast. So the main characters are the father and two sons, right? So the one of the sons decides he's going to ask his dad for his inheritance. And his dad willingly gives it over to him. And he takes off to a country far away, and he just squanders the money away. So he finds himself working at a pig farm. Keep in mind, he's a Jew. He's working at a pig farm. The country's gone into a famine, and he needs to eat, so he has to work. So he's working at a pig farm. And then it suddenly occurs to him, hey, I'm here working as somebody else's farmhand. Let me go back to my father and ask him for a job. So he goes back to his father, and his father sees him coming and immediately just hugs him, embraces him, gives him sandals, gives him a robe, gives him a ring, and then says, we have this calf that we've been fattening up. Let's have a celebration because he's come back. Well, the other son is really unhappy about this. He's really unhappy. And the other son says to the father, he's furious. He's absolutely furious. And he says, where's my book? Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. He says, how could you do this? You wouldn't do this for me and my friends. You wouldn't do this. And the father says, my son, you are always with me. What I have is yours. But it was only right we should celebrate and rejoice because your brother here was dead and has come to life. He was lost, and now he's found. Isn't that beautiful? He was lost and now he's found. So let's just put this in a little bit of a context. So for a son in that moment to ask his father for money and to leave, that's just basically saying to his father, you know, you're no good to me. You're as good as dead, right? Because you're supposed to be obligated to your parents and help them grow their wealth, right? Help them. But he's like, he's leaving. He's absolutely leaving. And then the other thing, for him to eat pork, right? Jews consider pork an unsanitary animal. So for him to be working at a pig farm and probably eating pork, again, that's really out there. So he has basically left God, the prodigal son, right? He's left God, he's left his people, he's left his family, absolutely everything. Now, the beautiful thing about this is we can see ourselves in every single one of these characters. Would you not agree? In every single one of these characters, right? And think about, just think about this. The father greets him, right? Isn't that beautiful? It's a reconciliation. It's a coming home. It's a soft place. That's the father. That's the father. The elder son, who is he? He's the judge. He's the one that believes in lack and limitation. If you give him that, then you don't have it for me, right? That's what the elder son is. So let's recognize ourselves in that. That isn't right, right? If you give them that, you're not giving it to me. He's the jealous one. He's the one who's in resistance in how his father handled his brother's homecoming. The prodigal son, he's lost his way. He's lost his way from his home. He's lost his way from his spiritual home. That's who the prodigal son is. And then again, the father, he's the unconditional love. He's the one that knows, his love knows no bounds. His forgiveness knows no bounds. He's the one that wants to reconcile. He's the one that's bringing them back together again, right? So the practice that I want to say for us, this Lenten retreat, this practice of fasting, is just recognizing where we are, recognizing when we're in bondage, recognizing when we're clenching, recognizing when we're fighting with life exactly as it is, when we're fighting with life. Recognize the power and the peace in pausing and relaxing and releasing. And then the last one, recognizing the reconciliation and the power in that and how that's a practice to reconcile with ourselves, our fractured selves. So I want to end with a poem that I have read to y'all, I don't know how many times, but it's just so appropriate. It's so perfect. And it's Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees repenting. You only have to love the soft animal of your body, letting it love what it loves. And so what I leave with you is my love. I love you. I encourage you. I support you. Have a wonderful Lenten retreat.